when I finished my internship after medical school, uh, which I did in Los Angeles County General Hospital for a year, finished in July 1st in 1961, 62, pardon me. Finished medical school in 61, finished my internship in 62. And I knew before that, a month or two before that, that I didn't have a residency set up. I had worked my way through college and worked my way through medical school. I was worn out. I was tired. And so I went down to the recruiting agent. I knew at that time you got drafted, and I was 1A. And if you didn't have a residency, you went right into the Army. But they would choose the time, or you could volunteer and go when you wanted to. So I didn't have a residency, and I wanted to take a break. So I went to the recruiting office and told them I want to join up. He asked me one question: are you willing to go to jump school? Well, before that, I told him, I said, you can do anything you want to with me. I don't care, but I'd like to see overseas duty. I'd like to go overseas. There were no wars on. I didn't see any reason not to go overseas and see the world. And I told him that, and he said, are you willing to go to jump school? Oh, I also told him, please don't send me to Fort Riley, Kansas to do hernia exams on recruits. I'll go crazy. So I said, yes, I'm willing to go to jump school. The Army doesn't like to hurt people, so I figured it was a reasonable thing to do. And so he signed me up for an unknown part of the Army. I showed up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Not Fort Bragg, pardon me. I first went to San Antonio for the basic doctor's course, where we learned to debride wounds and saw what gunshots would do and what calibers meant, and learned to use a compass and crawl under machine gun fire and do some pretty interesting things for 6 weeks with a bunch of doctors. We learned to march and wear uniforms, and we were all pretty enthusiastic about doing it the right way. And then I got orders to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I had no idea what was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I show up at a little Quonset hut, little green Quonset hut in Fort Bragg at building number 491, I think it was. And I walk in, there's a sergeant behind the desk, and I say, hi, I'm Captain Geis, I'm Dr. Geis, I'm ready to go to work. Well, Doc, we don't really have anything for you to do right now. There wasn't a soul else in the Quonset hut or around the Quonset hut, or it was kind of empty. He said, there are a couple of empty rooms over there. Go make yourself at home. I'll let you know when you can go. I said, what's going on? Why, where's everybody? Well, Doc, you don't have a security clearance. You need to have a top secret security clearance for me to tell you anything. Oh my God, I've made a big mistake. Here I didn't even know it was Special Forces. I just, I was just showing up. I went there for 3 days. No one would talk to me. No one would tell me anything. I was like, man, this is terrible. About the third day, I walked in. He says, Doc, I've got a patient for you. My first patient after I'm really a real doctor now. I've finished my internship and I can write orders. And it's just, my first patient. And so I go in, and this guy comes in, and he's got lots of stripes on his sleeve, "Sergeant, what seems to be the problem?" He says, "I've got malaria." You know, I thought to myself, and I didn't say this out loud, "Come on, fella, you're taking all the fun out of this. You're supposed to give me your symptoms. I give you the diagnosis. This is, now that I'm a real doctor, I kind of want to really play this game." But I didn't say anything. I said, "Just what makes you think you have malaria? I've never heard of malaria. I'm in the United States. It's something that used to be over in Africa, but I never have heard of it over here at all." "Well," he said, "I just came back from Laos." Laos? Lice? Are those things that bite? Well, Laos? I never heard of a country called Laos. "I just came back from Laos, and I have chills and fever every 3 days." Well, I didn't want to look like an idiot, so I put 2 and 2 together. "Sergeant, I think you have malaria." Well, at that time, we didn't go to the hospital. There was a hospital on the base, and they took care of dependents and delivered babies and did emergency room stuff. But Special Forces had to be ready to go at any time, within 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours notice, jump on a helicopter and go somewhere. And that kind of ticked them off over at the hospital, and they made plans for like emergency room call months in advance, and they just didn't want us over there. So we really weren't welcome over there. So I sent him over to the real doctors over at the hospital, and I guess he got taken care of. Well, the following day, everybody reappeared. It was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Everybody had been over somewhere behind a concertina wire fence or something like that. No one going in, no one going out, getting ready to invade Cuba if it were necessary, I guess. And so I went to work. And Special Forces is a group of young guys. They're all young, and they have to have what we call a picket fence profile. If you're a 1 in health, general health, and knees, and no hernias, and no flat feet, and the eyes are okay, you're 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, a picket fence profile. So they're all healthy. You might fall down and break a finger or something like that, but there wasn't anything for us to do except be there when they gave shots, and once in a while some patient had come in. So we could take any course we wanted to take, and they'd say, "Well, you got to go to jump school, go to jump school." So I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and went to jump school. It was kind of an exciting thing to do. I'd never jumped out of an airplane before, and they really work you out. Every day you run 4 or 5 miles, and you do push-ups, and you jump off of little platforms and learn to land and all that stuff. We got sucked up to the top of a 200-foot tower with a parachute, and they released us, and you got to feel what it was really like to fall with a parachute and hit the ground. One day I did something wrong. They'd yell at you, do 20 push-ups, do an about face and do 20 more. If they didn't like, well, it was good. They were just trying to make you strong. I knew what they were trying to do. One day this sergeant, looked over at me, and it was a cold day, and I'd worn my pea jacket up over my doctor's bars and my captain's bars because I didn't really want anyone to notice me. I figured if they noticed that I was an officer and a doctor, they'd probably want to kick me out. They were the real men. I'm just an interloper. Boing! He slapped the top of my helmet and said, "You dumb bunny, you're going to kill us all. I don't know what it was. I can't remember what it was. Maybe I jumped it or landed wrong, something like that. But anyway, doing, the helmet kind of, made a little noise or something like that. Give me 20 push-ups. I could do 20 back then. I couldn't even start that now. About 5 minutes later, he comes up and says, Captain, I'd like to have a few words with you over here, as we went kind of away from everybody else. And he says, my other sergeant just noted that I just slapped an officer. Just hit an officer. That's like a court-martial offense if you really hit somebody. He said, I'm so sorry. Well, I kind of laughed at him. I said, Sergeant, you didn't hit me. You hit the top of my helmet. And he said, and I told him, I said, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get us into shape. We're all a bunch of weenies, and you're trying to get us into shape. Anyway, he didn't say much else, and I went back to work. But it was kind of, it was a fun experience. And after 3 weeks, we made a jump every day for 5 days, made 5 jumps, and then came back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina from Fort Benning, Georgia. And still had nothing to do. One guy, there were 5 or 6 doctors, and one guy could handle all the medicine that was necessary, so there was another course. They said, well, we've got a course in free fall parachuting. Halo, high altitude jumping, low altitude opening. You'd jump out at 15, 20,000 feet and open at 4,000 feet. Lord knows what it's for, but I guess infiltration or something like that. Would you like to take that course? Well, sure, that really sounds fun. I mean, that's Disneyland par excellence.
Yeah.
So we went up to a little air base and camped out there, and ate sea rations and slept on the floor of this little abandoned Air Force airfield. I don't even remember where it was. And every day helicopters would land or a plane would land. We'd go up and jump out. We had these special parachutes with a big hole in the side of the parachute, and we could guide them down and turn them. And we started out at about 15,000 feet, and went to, my highest jump was 21,000 feet, or 110 seconds free fall, before we opened our chute. The landing is the same thing as landing elsewhere. Well, they were really, some of the sergeants were kind of impressed by the fact that I did that, because it was my first jump after jump school, my cherry jump they called it. And so anyway, it was a fun experience that Disney was charged for, and we spent a month up there and then came home. Then I had to do 3 months of the Special Warfare School. Now, the whole idea of Special Forces, and they had just been started, like by Kennedy the year before or so. Mm. I mean, it was a brand new organization, Special Forces. And we wore these little green berets over our ears. I mean, it was kind of cute. You kind of, and wore always boots, always wore jump boots everywhere. And they wanted to teach us how to defend a guerrilla war and how to fight a guerrilla war. So we spent 6 weeks learning about defending and reading about previous guerrilla warfare things, and then how to fight a guerrilla war. So you kind of had both things. And it was an amazing experience. We learned to use high explosives to blow up bridges and things like that. They gave us C4, taught us how to fuse it, how to shape it, to do shaped charges, everything from drilling a hole using a wine bottle, the bottom of a wine bottle to shape the charge so it would drill a hole, and you could drill a hole in a half-inch of steel that was, just a little rougher than a drill would make. How to cut a shaft 6 inches in diameter with C4. How to cut off steel beams. Anyway, we shot every gun. We just did a lot of things that were just very interesting.
Yeah.
So at some point, and it was interesting too that we had 100 Americans and 100 foreign officers. Everyone was captain or above. There were no lower ranks, and we had colonels and majors from Greece and France and that sort of thing. So I said, okay, and in a couple of weeks, we're gonna parachute into the swamps of Georgia for 2 weeks, and have the 82nd Airborne Division chase you. So we've got to make a jump, this tomorrow, just to kind of orient everybody to jumping out of an airplane. And so we jumped out. Everybody knows how to jump out of an airplane. You kind of form your body so that your rear end is the heaviest part of the airplane, of your body. When you jump out, it then you kind of go against the wind, and when the parachute opens, it doesn't jerk you. It's, I thought it was going to be a big heavy jerk, but it wasn't. And but you have to know how to jump out. You run out, you grab your chute, and you bend your legs, or straighten your legs and bend over. Well, we had a guy who was from France who had made 5 parachute jumps during World War II in France. He was a tall, good-looking French guy, a little older than most of us. He dove out of the airplane end over end, and as we were behind him, we watched him, and oh my God, you could get wound up in your parachute, and we'd all decided maybe we ought to talk to him and kind of give him some instructions. And then we thought, he's the only guy that's ever done this for real. This man is a real hero. We're a bunch of wimps, Who of us is going to go tell him how to do it right? We finally said, forget it. It's all him. Well, anyway, so a couple of weeks later, we got instructions that we were to carry whatever food we needed. We had to carry it in, and we weren't going to get fed by anybody. If we didn't carry it in, we'd go hungry. Well, there were several doctors, and we got out the handbook of Gerber's Handbook of Nutritional Data. They make baby food, Gerber's baby food, I think, at the time. Anyway, it would tell you everything in food, how many calories for 100 grams. And we researched and decided that, carbohydrates for 4 calories per gram. So we were going to carry instant mashed potatoes and instant rice, because we could just boil a little water, make food. We made our own jerky, a lot of salt, a lot of pepper, and we were thinking about carrying in a bunch of candy bars, but candy bars, you can eat a Hershey in about 10 seconds. It doesn't give you any oral satisfaction. So someone told us about survival rations. So we cooked up these survival rations, which was a pound of honey, a pound of flour, and a pound of pecans. Well, we looked up pecans. Pecans have 7 calories per gram of 7 calories per gram of pecan. Butter has 7 calories per gram. I mean, it's got a lot of fat, very nutritious. Well, we decided to carry oil in because it's 9 calories per gram, and if you're carrying it on your back, you could carry half as much weight and still have all the calories. And since we were going to be out there walking a lot, we didn't, we knew we could eat the fat. So anyway, we made these things up, and they were great because you would boil the honey and mix up the flour and the pecans and put it in a pan and bake it, and it made this thing that you could tear off. It was so hard to chew. Tear it off and soak it in your mouth. It gave you a lot of oral satisfaction as well as nutrition. And I always wondered, after that about pecans, because in my life I have often found, somebody have a bowl of pecans, and I'll take a handful of pecans and eat them, and then I'll get another handful and eat them. I love pecans. Eat a half a pound of pecans, or at least a quarter pound of pecans in just, a couple of minutes. I never went to the refrigerator and got a stick of butter out, a quarter of a pound of butter, and ate it. But it's essentially the same amount of fat. Well, it cut down on my pecan eating a little bit as I began to gain weight later on in life. So anyway, we parachuted in at midnight into the swamps of Georgia. And that's kind of a thrill to parachute in at midnight, because you don't really know. You look down, you see the ground coming up, but you can't really tell how far it is away. It's so dark, and you just kind of have to, you don't want your face down, because if you hit a tree or a post or something like that, you don't want to poke out an eye. So, when you just kind of crash in, hope you don't get hurt. Well, anyway, they had chosen the landing strip pretty well, and so no one in my group got hurt, although a doctor friend of mine landed in a tree and swung over into the tree and got a cardiac contusion. And later on, I was with him in Okinawa, and it's a whole another story to tell about that, but he made 3-star general in Special Forces, and he was still parachuting for the next 30 years. Anyway, I always thought maybe I should have stayed in. We were good friends. He might have drugged me along. I might have made a star. Anyway, so we had a few assignments while we were there. Each one is kind of a special story. But after a week, 10 days or something like that, we were kind of getting tired of eating the food that we had brought in. And so one day, one of the guys that was kind of running the show with a group of us said, "Today we're going to walk about 6 miles and take an airdrop of food. We know you're hungry. We know you haven't been eating all that well. We're going to take an airdrop of food, and so take yourself your jungle blanket so you can wrap up and stay warm at night." It wasn't that cold, but anything else you might need. So I took my rucksack, and I just happened to have a little oil in it and some string and some salt and pepper. So we walk 5 or 6 miles and get there about 4 o'clock in the evening. At about 5:30 in the evening, the airplanes come over. We flash our flashlights according to some code. We are expecting an airdrop of rations, sea rations, little boxes and that sort of thing. The back end of the airplane comes down. and they come over real low. And they throw out about 40 chickens. There were about 40 of us, and they throw out 40 live chickens. They've tricked us. You know, they ain't gonna make it easy on us. We knew we were expected to figure out how to cook those chickens. Well, everybody had an idea how to do it. The chickens, at least they tied the legs together so that they were easy to. We didn't have to chase them, and so each guy got a chicken. There were about 40 of us and about 40 chickens, and so one guy or one group says, "Oh, well, here's what we do: we build a nice fire and let it burn down the coals. And we take our chickens and we pack clay around the chicken, and I don't know whether they gutted them or not, but I think they did. But pack clay around the chicken, throw them on the fire, and when the clay is baked rock hard, you break off the clay, off comes the feathers, probably the skin, but the chicken's cooked on the inside. Sounds good, doesn't it? The only problem was we were about 3 or 4 miles from the coast, I think, and the creek that we were on was sand and mud and stagnant, nasty water. You know, it was. So anyway, they packed all this sand around it and mud and baked it, and it all ran off and, well, you know, burned up the chickens. It was inedible. Another group says, no, you just wet the chicken's feathers, just throw it in the water, wet it, and then you throw it in the fire and you let the feathers char, and then you skin it, and just peel off the skin, and the meat's. That didn't work either. One other guy knew how to clean a chicken. Grandma and Grandpa had a chicken coop in their backyard when I was growing up. And Grandma would say, "Dickie, catch me 5 chickens. You know, we're going to have chicken for Sunday dinner today." She gave me a long wire thing with a hook on the end, and I'd pull the heads off. She'd bring out boiling water. We'd dip them in the boiling water, and the feathers would just peel off. And then we would singe them, and then I'd watch her clean them, and she'd cut them up, and we'd have chicken. So I knew how to clean a chicken. So he and I, we picked our chickens carefully. We singed all the little feathers off. We gutted them, cleaned them out on the inside. And I had string, and I had oil, and I had salt and pepper. So we got a long stick, and about 6 or 8 feet long. We put a stick up on the other side of the fire and put this stick in it and tied these chickens real. I had the string, you know, we tied them on there, and by this time the fires the other guys had built were all down to coals, you know, and we rotisseried those chickens for 45 minutes or something. There's nothing like a rotisserie chicken. It is the best chicken there is. The reason is that all the juices don't run out into the bottom of the pan. As you turn the rotisserie, the juices run from one side to the other, but they all stay inside the chicken, so the breast is as moist as the rest of the chicken. It's just, delicious. So we rotisseried these chickens, and they were unequivocally, the best chicken I ever put in my mouth. We had about 5 or 6 guys looking over our shoulders when we started to eat those. We could only eat half a chicken each or less. And we had, "Are you going to eat all that chicken? You have it." So we had to give it all away. But anyway, I later on decided that I was going to teach my Boy Scouts, that my son was in his Boy Scout troop, and I was given the job of handling a weekend retreat. Once every month we'd go somewhere and camp out, and I decided that I was going to teach them how to uh, kill, clean, pick, clean, and bake a chicken. Well, that's a totally different story, but it's a good story too, and it goes on and on. I mean, there are a couple more stories to tell in this, but anyway, we had an amazing time in that 6 weeks. During that camp out, when we were at that camp, one day, Colonel Metaxas from Greece, Colonel, you know, got a kidney stone. He'd had a kidney stone before, and he knew what the pain was. It goes down the back here on one side, and so someone came to me. I was the doctor, and said, Colonel Metaxas has a kidney stone. I said, well, we just have to evacuate him. I said, call in a helicopter, and we'll send him to the hospital. Oh, no. If we call in a helicopter, then we'll give away our position. This exercise is costing $2 million. If we give our position away to the 82nd Airborne Division, they're going to come out and arrest us all. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of I was kind of stunned that, we couldn't just call a helicopter and evacuate this colonel. So you'll have to walk 5 miles to the road. I looked at Colonel. Colonel weighed about 210 pounds or something like that. I couldn't carry him. I had one other guy going with me. Together we couldn't carry him. If we couldn't. If we gave him, I had an ampule or two of morphine in my rucksack. If I gave him the morphine, he wasn't going to be able to walk. Colonel, I have morphine, but I can't give it to you till we hit the road. I made him walk for that 5 miles with an active kidney stone. Oh, God. We get to the road. You'd think that we'd be able to walk out on the road. Oh, no. We had to wait until a marked pickup came by. It'd drive by, and then it'd drive by again. And the guy that I was with say, I'll recognize the pickup. So that it came by, it had a little sign in the back, it said some university or something like that. And the next time it comes back, we run out in the road, get in. Once we're in the pickup, we're King's X, so we go to the hospital, and I drop him off and come back and walk back into camp. When we hit the road, I gave him 16 milligrams of morphine. Oh, he was so happy after that. That relieved his pain. I may not have given him all 16 at once, but the Army has these little things that look like little toothpaste tubes with a needle on the end. You break off the end and you stick it in and put the end back on and give it. It's for military stuff. Anyway, at the end of this 6 weeks course, they had a big graduation. Oh, we went formal. I was in my formal uniform, and my parents came up from Houston to see this. And after that, I was going to head for Okinawa. I introduced my parents to Colonel Metaxas at this party. And he said, "Your son is a mean man." He made me walk 5 miles while having the kind of pain that only a woman giving birth knows about. Anyway, your son is a mean man. And he was right, but I knew I couldn't carry him, there was no way to carry this guy, and he did fine. But anyway, we graduated, and I drove my folks back to Houston, and then I went on to San Francisco and flew to Okinawa, and they shipped my car over. So anyway, that was my early experience in Special Forces. And, all I did for the first year of Special Forces was go to classes. You know, I mean, interesting stuff. I got to Okinawa, and there was no more to do there than back at Fort Bragg. Well, would you like to go to ski school in Hokkaido, Japan, northern Japan? Beautiful. Snow 6 feet high. Oh, tough duty. Tough duty. Now, when they say ski school, we had to walk up the hills. I mean, you get in shape walking up the hills, and you could walk for half a day and ski down in 45 seconds. But you're taking one step through heavy snow. It's not a quick. But on the weekends, we could go to the local ski resort, rent skis, go up the ski lift, and we got to know in this little town of Kamifurano, Japan, in Hokkaido. We got to know the ski lift guy that owned and ran the ran the ski lift. And at one point, the city of Kamifurano invited the officers to for a lunch, and we had sake and sat by the mayor and met all these people. I sat by a school teacher. He said, could you, I'd like for you to come and teach my class at the local school. And I said, you got to be kidding. I don't speak one word of Japanese. How am I going to teach your students? He said, well, I teach English. And he said, I've taught them very well. But they don't think that they could communicate with someone who speaks English. I want you to come and just talk to them and just let them know that you understand what they say and that they can understand what you say. So I always thought that I would put on my resume in later life, taught school in Japan, for one day. But anyway, I went and, I walked in the class and introduced me, and I just walked around and talked to the students. My name is Richard Geis. What is your name? I live in, where do you live? How old are you? I just made it up as I went along and had a great hour. The students loved it. I had a good time, and they appreciated it. Well, anyway, so that was my experience as a teacher in a Japanese school.
Yeah.
So anyway, the guy that ran the ski lift was invited us to his home, and we there met his daughter and his daughter's friend, who were like 16-year-old beautiful Japanese girls, just, And they said, we are learning how to do the tea ceremony. We're taking a course, and our teacher says that, to kind of graduate, we need to give a tea ceremony to someone who has never seen it before, and we would like to give it to you. So John Matheson and I were invited to have the tea ceremony by these two beautiful young girls. Well, the room where they hold the tea ceremony, or where they held it, was a separate little room, I guess outside the teacher's place where she was living. And you had to crawl in this little door about 2 feet high or 1.5 feet high. You have to demean yourself, get down on your hands and knees and crawl in. You can't stroll in boldly or something like that. It's kind of a part of the tradition. And we went in, and they mix up the tea. I mean, you have to hold the little brush. You know, uh, they put the tea leaves, which have been deveined and ground up. They grind it up, you know, and you put it in a little thing, and they pour in hot water, and they have to do it so gracefully in a certain way, and they whip it up, and oh, you can't hold your hand like that. You got to hold it just like this. I mean, it's just you know, everything. You get your PhD in the tea ceremony. You're a doctorate of preparing tea for the tea ceremony, and then you know they serve it to you in this little bowl, and the bowls are, you know, kind of rough and handmade. You know, they're made of ceramic. You know, and you have to. They hand you the tea after it's been made, and it's not. It doesn't really taste all that good. It's kind of murky stuff, and you have to turn the bowl, you know, two sides to the left, and you have to drink it in one drink, and then turn the bowl. I mean, I can't remember at all what the official way to do it was, but they taught us that, and they did it, and the teacher, um, you know, critiqued them and that sort of thing. Well, it was a lot of fun, and they had a in the camp that we stayed in. They had a hot bath. You know, we'd go take a boiling hot bath, and then we had to walk about a block through a covered area, and we'd be real warm by the time we got out of the bath, and it was cold. I mean, you're talking cold in Hokkaido, Japan, and the barracks were not heated. I mean, you could walk back to where you're going to sleep and crawl in your sleeping bag, and your temperature would just be getting down to normal, and you could go to sleep. Anyway, a great experience. Tough duty. We had to walk up the side of this mountain to where there was a hot spring, a volcanic hot spring on the top of this mountain. Not quite clear at the top, but it was up quite a ways, and they had built a spa and a place to sleep, you know, and we had to go there for a couple of nights and stay there and take hot baths and you know, ski. And I mean, so the military was kind of interesting for me.
You got in at the right time.
Oh, there were no wars on at that time. They were just started this police action in Vietnam. So the last few days I was up there, I got an orders report immediately to South Vietnam. Well, I packed up my stuff, flew back to Okinawa, and then flew to Vietnam. And I was there for 6 months. And I actually was sent down there to replace an Air Force doctor in in a small air base in South Vietnam. It was the a small town, Soc Trang, or at least it was the Soc Trang Air Base. And there were maybe 20, 30 helicopters and 10 World War II fighter planes. It was kind of an interesting thing. And, you know, I was the only doctor there, and everyone was in fairly good health. Occasional cold or something like that. Occasional clap, you know, you'd have to treat or something like that. I had one guy with appendicitis. I sent him right back to Saigon, put him on a helicopter and sent him back to Saigon. And so after, I did have to go out and retrieve one body of a man who had flown one of these World War II Air Force planes and crashed it into the ground, straight into the ground. And of course it did kill him. And it was it was something to see. One was that the plane itself, there was no sign of it. It was all in little pieces. I mean, it was just turned to little shards of metal, and the only thing that survived kind of intact was the motor, which buried itself in a hole about 6 or 8 feet across and about 6 feet deep, and in the bottom was a hole about 2 feet in diameter, and inside that was the magnesium motor of this airplane. Now I think that it was magnesium. I'm not sure, but this is, as I remember, is what I was told. And it was burning, and it was making a sound, just in the bottom of this hole. There was something, it was so bright you could hardly look at it, and it apparently when it hit, there was enough heat generated to start it on fire. Of course, the engine was running, and the body of the pilot was, there was no evidence for a little bit. We finally looked around, and we began to find pieces of bones, and the bones had been, all the flesh and skin had been torn off of it, and we found shards of skin and pieces of this, bones and small, broken pieces of bones. The only intact thing that we found of this pilot was his left hand, and he had his wedding ring on it. And when we gathered all this, small amount of stuff that we could use, we didn't have DNA to identify the body at that point. We put it in a big bag, body bag. But when we found the perfectly intact left hand, I thought, well, we got fingerprints. We can identify and the ring. We can identify the body, and so we pulled out and left. I've thought about that fire ever since, and I'm pretty sure that it was a motor that was made out of magnesium because it's light or something like that. But anyway, it looked like you were looking into the very maw of hell. I mean, it was just sizzling down there. And one of those things that you kind of can't forget. But anyway, I didn't really have that much to do at that air base. And after 2 months, I my replacement came. I was Army, and this was an air base, so they sent an Air Force replacement. The first guy had gotten sick. I'm not sure what it was. He didn't like it down there and left or got sick. Anyway, the replacement came, and they said, "You're relieved. You can go." So I went to the major, who was the ranking officer of this little base, and I said, "Major, my replacement has come. I need orders to go back to Okinawa." And he looked at me and he said, "Huh, we don't write orders for Army people. This is the Air Force. You're on your own." I thought, this is interesting. I think I'll just go to Paris and spend the rest of my tour of duty. No one knows I'm down here. No one knows I've come, from Special Forces up in Okinawa. They don't know where I am. They know where I am, but they don't know I've been relieved, and they won't know I've been relieved till I show up back up there. So anyway, well, I didn't do that. I had heard of AWOL, but I thought I could go spend the next 4 or 5 months, to finish out my tour of duty in Paris, and then show up back in Okinawa and go home. Anyway, it was just a passing thought. So I went back to Saigon, and the colonel who had been in Japan. My commanding officer in Japan and led the group there, was in Saigon at the head of a B detachment, Special Forces B detachment. So I just dropped in on that B detachment and to kind of say hello and see what was going on. And he knew who I was, and he said, "Why don't you stay with me? I can use you." And I said, "You know, I have nothing else to do, and I'm out of the Army in 6 months. You know, they won't be able to get me back in Okinawa and send me back here for a full tour of duty." And so anyhow, I figured I wouldn't get in trouble, and I ended up visiting every Special Forces camp in his core area. I think it was 4th Corps area. And so the first assignment he gave me was to go down to a Special Forces camp. And an A detachment is made up of 2 officers, a captain, a lieutenant, and 10 enlisted men. There'll be 2 medics. And there'll be 2 ammunition specialists or explosive specialists, and 2 communication specialists, and 2 information, not information, that's not the word, intelligence specialists, and 2, anyway, whatever it was, it's 10 guys, 2 of each specialty. And then they would have, each Special Forces camp would have 300 Vietnamese troops, and the Army supplied them with ammunition and guns, and they trained. They were dependent on the team to lead and instruct, and they instructed how to shoot and how to use these different things. So he said, this Special Forces group has been in Vietnam now for a month, and every one of the guys in that camp has been in Saigon sick for a week or 2 with diarrhea and vomiting and the GI problem. He said, every one of them. He said that, he said, go down there and find out what's going on. So I went out, and I go in. They seem to be doing everything right. They're cooking their food and boiling their water, and they have a little village down the hill. And I noticed, that they're drinking sodas, Cokes or whatever, Lehighs, on ice. Well, where are you getting the ice? Do you have an ice machine up here? Oh, no, we get our ice down from the village here. I said, this village is getting its water out of this muddy little stream. I said, and they're probably crapping in the stream upstream a mile. No wonder you've been sick. You can't use the ice from this circumstance. Doc, it's hot out here. You guys up in Saigon, you got it easy. I mean, it's hot. And by God, we're going to drink Cokes on ice. And the way I have it figured is that we will get sick for a week or 2, and then we'll get over it, and we'll be immune, and we won't have to worry about it anymore. We can drink anything we want to drink. Well, the reason that the Army's so careful is that, you just stay sick. And they give you these pills to put in your canteen, iodine pills. Man, they make the water taste bad, but they will kill all the bacteria in it, or you boil it, one or the other. But you can't eat the ice. You can't, because that doesn't kill the bacteria. Well, I went back to Saigon after a couple of days and told the colonel. Well, he didn't say too much. he just kind of, about 2 weeks later, he came to me and said, I want you to write that up as a report. He said, that turkey is not qualified to lead a special forces team. He doesn't have any common sense. He thinks he's smarter than the U.S. Army. And that's actually what I told him. This guy thinks he's smarter than the U.S. Army. He won't obey the rules. And he said he ordered an emergency resupply of ammunition at midnight last night. Emergency resupply means we are under attack, and we went all out and we resupplied him with helicopters, put in helicopters at 2 o'clock in the morning. He said that, that's really dangerous in the dark, and they weren't able to have big lighted field or something like that, or protected field. But it's, when you emergency resupply means we're under attack and we're running out of ammunition. We need it now. And he said, this guy just doesn't have any common sense. I'm going to relieve him of duty, which pretty well means in the Army, you're finished with your career. I mean, you just, and he said, I want your report to support my report. And so I wrote it up for him, and I have no idea the ultimate, what ultimately happened out there, but anyway, he was kind of appreciative, and so then he sent me to another camp, and it was surrounded by great ditches, 6 feet deep and 10 feet across, and concertina wire and machine gun nests around the periphery, and 200 or 300 Vietnamese troops and a special forces team. And it was down in the Delta area, pretty flat. It was actually in the middle of a rubber plantation, and lots of trees around. They had had some problems with Viet Cong coming in at night and lobbing mortars into the camp, just 2 or 3 mortars, and then they'd run off. So they had adopted the practice of sending out an ambush patrol somewhere around that camp every night. And the word was that you don't come around this camp at night, you'll be shot. So they thought that there was they told us to come to the meeting room after dinner that night, after we had eaten. And so I show up at this little meeting, and they said, we think that there are some Viet Cong who are spending the night in this little village 2 or 3 clicks down the road, 2 or 3 kilometers down the road. And we plan to surround that village at midnight, after we think that the Viet Cong that are sleeping there have gotten in the village. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, we're going to count the people. We know everybody in that village. We know how many people they are and who they are. And if we find 3 or 4 extra guys, they're Viet Cong. They're the ones that are doing this to us, and they're being fed and taken care of in this village. So come back in an hour. It's now 8 o'clock. Come back in an hour, and we'll have a final briefing and leave at about 10 o'clock and walk over to this village and surround it at midnight. Well, we dropped back to when I hit Vietnam. When I got to Vietnam, landed at Tan Son Nhut Air Base and checked in, they looked at me and said, Captain, do you want to carry a weapon while you're here? You're a doctor, you don't have to carry a weapon. And I said, I'm from Oklahoma. I've been hunting all my life. Someone shoots at me, I'm going to shoot back. I want a weapon. What do you want to carry? You can carry a shotgun, you can carry a pistol, you can carry an AR-15. Later on, that was called the M16, but it was called the AR-15 when I was there. We can give you a Thompson submachine gun. That's a World War II weapon. Whatever you want to carry, we'll give you with ammunition. And I said, well, I think I'll take that AR-15. That looks like a pretty nice weapon. Well, how much ammunition do you want to carry, Doc? How much can you carry? Well, that comment kind of takes me back to when I was a little boy. I was a little boy in Oklahoma, and my father hunted, and Uncle Joe hunted, and Uncle Floyd was Dad's cousin, and he hunted. We went out hunting with Uncle Floyd one time, and I was 9 years old. Carl was 12 or 13, and Carl and I were not allowed to hunt. We were, too young, didn't have guns. We were the bird picker-uppers. We followed them around and picked up the birds. And Uncle Floyd had a couple of other guys that he was taking hunting, so there were 5 hunters and 2 kids. But it was kind of fun, we kind of enjoyed it. So we go to this farmer's house, and Uncle Floyd talks to him a little bit and asks him to hunt. Sure, you can hunt. By the way, I have a gun in here. I'll sell you for $10. He brings out this old 12-gauge shotgun. It's about, it's long. The 2 guys that were hunting with Uncle Floyd looked at that gun and they said, you couldn't get me to shoot that gun. It'll kick your arm off. That old piece of junk. Uncle Joe had been in the military. He was a long-time hunter. I don't know. He looks in the barrel. It doesn't look that rusty. He shoots it a couple of times. He says, it's pretty cleaned out now. It doesn't kick any more than any other 12 gauge. We're shooting short ammunition. It's not kicking too much. Dad looks at Carl, my older brother, and says, Carl, if you'll shoot that gun, you can have it. Well, Carl knew he was due to get a new gun. He was going to get a new gun from Sears, shiny, $40, nice new gun. And besides, he kind of believed those 2 guys. He thought that old piece of junk would probably knock his arm off. He said, no, I don't think I want to shoot that gun. Well, I saw my chance. I knew that if I would shoot that gun, they had to buy it for me. I was 9 years old. I was going to jump ahead 4 years. I raised my hand. I said, I'll shoot that gun. Well, if that kid will shoot that gun, he ought to have it. As, everybody agreed that if that little kid would shoot that gun, well, I was a stocky kid. I didn't, I shot it. I didn't care if that gun killed me. I was going to shoot that gun. And I shot it a couple of times, and Dad bought it. And he sawed off the stock. He sawed off the barrel. And that reduced the kick. So I started hunting at age 9. Well, the first time I ever went out hunting with Uncle Floyd, we hunted doves. And in Oklahoma, they come from all the north part of the United States and fly through Oklahoma. And they will feed in the fields in the fall, and they will then water at a local watering hole, roost in the trees. And so we would hunt in the evenings around a watering hole, a cow drinking hole. And there weren't that many in Oklahoma. It's pretty dry. And so I went out with Uncle Floyd, and I had my little gun and a box of shells, 25 shells. And we go out to a water hole about a half mile away or a quarter of a mile in from the road, and a little cow pond, and we sit there for a little while, and all of a sudden, along about 5:30 or 6, something like that, doves started coming into water, and there are doves everywhere. I mean, they're flocking in right and left. Well, I shoot up my box of shells, and we shot them only flying. That was the rule. And I had 6 or 8 birds. I mean, I was pretty pleased with myself, at age 9. And but I'm out of shells. Uncle Floyd, I'm out of shells. Can I borrow some of yours? I'll pay them back. I'll give you 2 for 1. Uncle Floyd has got a little wooden box. He's got 3 or 4 boxes of shells in there. He's got some in his pockets. He's got a few looses. He's got enough shells for an army, see. Uncle Floyd looks at me and says, "You hunt with me? You bring your own shells." Uncle Floyd, this is Dickie. This is your nephew. Actually, he was a second cousin uncle, but anyway, he wouldn't give me a damn thing. Would not give me a single bullet. And I sat there and I broiled, I can tell you that I never went out hunting after that without more ammunition than I could carry almost. I never ran out of ammunition again. And I resented Uncle Floyd, but I couldn't say too much because Uncle Floyd's the guy who took me hunting. How am I going to complain? If I cry and bitch and cuss him out, I won't ever go hunting again. So I have to kind of swallow my pride. And so anyway, when I hit Vietnam, he says, "How much ammunition do you want to carry?" Ding, 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 ding. That's lesson. I say, "How much can you carry?" He says, "Well, I can give you a web belt with shoulder straps and 6 little packets. Each packet holds 3 clips of ammunition. You can tape 2 clips together, so you can turn it over. It gives you 20 clips, 20 rounds each. That gives you 400 rounds of ammunition. 400 rounds, that's about 10 boxes of shells. 15 boxes. That's just right. So I'm carrying 400 rounds of ammunition. Well, when I went out back to my hooch, I got my ammunition ready to go. And I was carrying a rucksack full of medical supplies, bandages, and not that I could do much, but I could give a little morphine if someone got hurt, and bandage up an injury. And so I walked back for the final briefing, and I walk in, and all the sergeants and the captain were in there, and they started to laugh at me. "Doc, we're just going to town down here. We know there are no big concentrations of troops down here. I mean, this is the Delta. It's flat. There's no armies of Viet Cong down here. We're just going after 2 or 3 guys." The captain had a pistol with an extra clip in his pocket. One guy has an AR-15 with an extra clip in his pocket and one in the gun. One guy's got a shotgun with a pocket full of shells. One guy has a Thompson submachine gun with an extra clip. And I walk in with 400 rounds of ammunition. And they laugh at me. "We're just going to town, Doc." Well, it was embarrassing. They like to laugh at the doctor because the doctor's not considered really special forces. They know that he's not really trained. And I actually went back to my hooch where I was sleeping, and I took off 2 of those packets. I only had 4 packets with 3 clips each, and 2 in the gun. I only had 14 clips of ammunition instead of 20. But I just, Dong, 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 don't run ammunition. Uncle Floyd's lesson was just there in my brain. So anyway, we walk out the gate. Unbeknownst to all of us, they had sent out the ambush patrol before they closed up camp, and they didn't like to let it be known that we were going to go surround this village because they knew that there were some of the people in that camp were probably Viet Cong. And they'd slip out and go down there and warn them. And then it'd be gone. They'd never be back, you know. So they closed the camp, and then they sent out the ambush patrol, told them to go out behind the camp, not where we were going to come out in the front. Well, you know, they didn't send an American with them, and they told us Vietnamese, I don't know whether it was a captain or a sergeant or something, to go around to the back. Well, he was going to do it his way. So he just goes out the front gate, right where we're going to walk, and sets up the ambush. So, 10 o'clock comes, 11 o'clock, whenever it was we were going to leave. We walk out the front in 4 little groups, and there are probably 50 or 60 of us. There's some Vietnamese soldiers and 3 or 4 groups of Americans. And walk, I don't know, a couple hundred yards. All of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. It's tat, 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 boom, boom, tat, 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 tat. And it lasts 10 seconds, 15 seconds. No one gets killed, but one Vietnamese soldier got a bullet through the soft part of his leg, and one American got one through his cheek here. It was all over very quickly, but that kind of ruined the entire operation. So we go back into camp, and much to my amazement, not one of those sergeants ever came up and apologized to me for laughing at me. But the colonel, I was fortunately in the 3rd group. I was pretty far behind where all the action took place. We called in a helicopter. They came and took those guys to Saigon for treatment. We went back inside, and the colonel found me. And he said, guys, you know who I thought of when all that started? You were the only guy that had any ammunition. I started to look for you. I wanted to be by you, And I said, you know what I thought of, Colonel? I thought of those 6 clips I'd left behind. Well, anyway, I eventually went to all those Special Forces camps, and I went up to the other 2 core areas and had some experiences up there too that are kind of interesting. And I actually, at one point, roomed with Robin Moore, the guy who wrote the book about Special Forces, and they made a movie about it. Anyway, it was an interesting experience. And the captain also said, he said, if you ever want to be the leader, the captain of a Special Forces A detachment, I'll give you one. Well, that was high compliment for a doctor to say that I would be qualified. But anyway, as a Oklahoma hunter, hunting all my life, shooting everything from deer to
Well, where were you
quail.
when they did that, when you went fishing with them?
So anyway, I went to these different Special Forces camps, and one of the after a while, I'd been to all the camps in that core area, so I went up to the next core area. There are 4 cores in Vietnam. Ended up going to 3 and seeing and I'm just kind of doing this kind of on my own. I mean, if I hadn't been doing something that I thought was reasonable, I'd have probably been court-martialed or something like that. But I mean, the colonel would have covered for me, and he had been my commander back in Okinawa, so I felt safe. But anyway, I go up to I think it was 2 core area. It was in Trong, and 2 or 3 core, I don't know. Anyway, I think it was Natron, 2 core. Anyway, we I'm there for a couple of days, and the weekend is coming, and so one of the sergeants say, Doc, would you like to go fishing this weekend? We're on the coast of Natron. It's a sweet little coastal city. And would you like to go fishing this weekend? I'd love to go fishing out in the ocean, you know. We have this boat. And I said, but I don't have any gear. I don't have any fishing poles or reels or anything like that. Where can I get some? Doc, you don't need any of that. We've got all that. You just show up Sunday morning at 6 o'clock down at the dock. I said, well, at least let me buy the bait. I can go down and get a bunch of shrimp or something like that for bait. And Doc, I tell you, we've got all that covered. We've got all that taken care of. You just show up. Bring $1 or $2 if we might have some beer or something like that. If you want to. Well, you know, it's an offer I can't refuse. So I show up Sunday morning at about 6 a.m. or something like that down on the dock. And here's this swift boat, this nice aluminum boat. You know, it's about 30 feet long and has twin diesel engines in it. And cool looking boat. I get on and I say, well, where's the fishing gear? And, oh, it's down below, Doc. We'll get it out when we're ready to fish. Oh, okay. I'm still, you know, I have no idea what's going on. So about 10 or 12 guys get on board, and we go out and go up the coast about 2 or 3 or 5 miles, something like that. And, stop the boat. Time to fish. They go down and they come up with 2 cases of hand grenades. I have never seen a hand grenade, you know, much less thrown a hand grenade, but they come up with 2 cases of hand grenades. Oh, now I know what they mean by fishing. Now, they start throwing these hand grenades, and a hand grenade weighs about, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 pounds. I mean, they're heavy, so you don't throw them like a baseball. You kind of fling them with a stiff arm. You kind of like throwing a discus or something. And yeah, these guys are dancing across this rocking boat and flinging these hand grenades, and they could throw those things 20, 30, 40 feet. I can't remember how far it was, but you know, it was they were strong young guys, and it was a competition to see who could fling one the farthest. I was thinking, oh my God, you know, what if one of them trips on one of these things on the deck, you know, sticking up, you know, and drops a hand grenade on the deck? What are you going to do? Well, if you jump in the water, someone's going to pick up the hand grenade and toss it in the water. You're going to get your eardrums blown in, at least, if not, you know. You don't want to be in the water when a hand grenade goes off a couple of feet away from you. I didn't know what it would be, but anyway, we were killing fish that way. They were floating up, you know. And I kind of assigned myself the job of kind of standing nearby those guys as they were flinging the hand grenade. So if they dropped it, I could grab it right quick and throw it overboard. You got 3 seconds, you know, but you had to be close by and ready to go. And you know, I assigned myself that duty because I did not want to die. I just knew that there was going to be an accident and I was going to die, and I could just see someone walking up to the front door of my parents and saying, well, we're so sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Geis, you know, Richard died in a battle on you know, and there was a hand grenade, and I thought, oh, shit. So I'm sweating this out. One of the guys, sergeants, come over and he hands me a hand grenade. Now there's an old story up in Oklahoma, that joke story that they used to tell about the guy who everybody knows hunts the river with hand grenade or with dynamite. You know, one day he takes the game warden out with him. They're out in the boat. The guy gets out, opens a box, gets a stick of dynamite out, and lights a fuse and throws it off in the water. Boom, it goes off. The game warden is watching this. You know, I mean, this is crazy. He's the game warden. Guy gets another stick out, got a little short fuse on it. He lights the fuse, hands it to the game warden, says, "You gonna fish?" You know, obviously he's gonna throw it over, and now he's complicit. Well, the guy handed me a hand grenade. I remembered that story, and I immediately thought, you know, they don't want me telling anybody about this. They want me in on it. And so I've got to throw a damn hand grenade or I'm toast. You know, I mean, I've never seen a hand grenade. I've seen movies where they pull the pin. I look at it, there's a pin, you know, and there's this little hand thing that flips off. I've seen that. It starts the fuse, but that happens in the air. You throw the hand grenade, let loose of the... So I lean up, I don't want to slip or fall, and I lean up against the rail. I pull the pin, and I'm holding this thing, and all of a sudden I realize that I'm gripping this hand grenade so hard my arms are beginning to cramp, you know. It doesn't take much to hold that little handle on. Anyway, I threw this thing not more than 6 feet off the boat. I mean, I just enough to get it off into the water where it's not going to blow the boat up. So now I'm part of the group. No one's going to be mad at me. I can't complain. No one's going to shoot me, you know, accidentally. So anyway, so all the hand grenades finally get used up, and we've got, you know, 6 or 8 fish, you know, nice little fish, and we're gonna, but not quite enough to feed the entire group. Okay, we're gonna go down the little farther down here and start fishing again. We're gonna really fish now. And they start up the boat, go 3 or 4 miles up the coast. They come out with a little satchel, a little army satchel thing, and it has 15 pounds of C4 in it. That's enough to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, it's a lot of C4. These 2 explosive experts are doing the job, and they put 2 fuses on, and they have these little things you pop. You pull them and they pop, you know, you light the fuse, and they put on a 15-second fuse, which is plenty of time, or 30-second, I don't know what it is. They pop it, they zip up the bag, and it's got a few rocks in it, and they throw it over the side of the boat 5 or 6 feet away, and then they turn around and they have one of their Vietnamese guys driving the boat. He doesn't speak the language. He doesn't know what's going on. But they all start yelling at him. "Okay, go, go, go! Get out of here!" And he turns around, he looks at him, and go, go, go! Get out of here! He pushes forward the throttles. You know, the motors race. He spins the wheel, and we turn in a U-turn and go right back over the area where they've just thrown that 15 pounds of C4. Well, I never believed in levitation, but I'll swear everybody on that boat was 4 inches off the surface of that boat. I mean, people were on their toes. Uh, I was, where do you go? I mean, the only thing you can do is levitate off the ground. Well, I don't think we were actually very far, but I think we were on our toes. And the thing went off not more than 10 feet away from where the boat was and covered the boat up with spray, but no one was hurt. Didn't explode the boat, didn't, you know. And we actually got some 2 or 3 big fish, I mean, anyway, I knew they were going to, I was going to die in that country. And if I did, it was going to be my own people that killed me, We stopped, cooked the fish, and ate them, and had a great time.
So you had a pretty relaxing special forces experience.
Oh God! Well, I always thought, these guys are crazy, but if I get caught out in the middle of Vietnam and I'm under attack by the Viet Cong or something like that, I want guys who are crazy helping me and defending me. I mean, these are the guys I want to. They're just as crazy as they can be, but they're the ones I want. They will do everything they can. Well, I don't know why they ever invited me in the first place, on this thing. I mean, I have no idea. You'd think they'd had better sense than to invite a doctor, who obviously doesn't know anything about all this stuff, and then start throwing hand grenades.
Yeah.
But anyway, none of them ever apologized to me about that either. But the visualization of them going up to the door and knocking, and Mr. and Mrs. Geis were so sorry. There was an explosion in the bay of such and such, and not trying, and your son was involved, and they ain't gonna tell what happened. It was we think it was a bomb from the.
Yeah.
Anyway. It was, of course, the only other time I thought I was going to die in that country was I was flying from someplace to someplace in a helicopter, a Huey, HU-1B, and we're flying along at about 2,500 feet. All of a sudden, we're going straight down. As a helicopter blade goes around, it has to turn and catch more air or less air depending on which way you're going. Every time it rotates, it turns a little bit, and that blade is going at 600 miles an hour at the tip, and it's it makes this chop 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 sound as it breaks the sound barrier at the tips of the wings. Tips of the propellers, and so it's really hard to move the stick to control it, and so they have power steering. They call it a servo mechanism, but it's a pump that pumps oil, and it's power steering, and it really well. Something happened and the servo mechanism failed. They later told me, and so the plane just kind of flipped forward, or the helicopter flipped forward and was going down. Well, I'm in the back. I look up, and these pilots have got both hands on the stick, and they're pull it back, and we come out at fortunately it didn't happen at 100 feet. If it had happened at 100 feet, we'd have been all dead. We'd have hit the ground. But we were high enough that they got it out, and they weren't. Ordinarily, a helicopter when it lands goes in and it settles straight down, and they have to be able to control the helicopter because the blade's going around this way, and the helicopter has a tendency to swing this way. So they have a tail rotor that controls that. They couldn't do that. All they could do is just two guys, two hands on the stick. So they slid in on the grass at Tonsanute Air Base, and we were fine. But when I got home later on, and years later, married Kathy, and Kathy had been the director of Herman Life Flight for 10 years, and had become a lawyer, and then quit that because she didn't have any satisfaction being a lawyer like she did being a nurse. And they wanted her to go back into the helicopter division at the Herman Hospital. My experience with helicopters was they are dangerous. I do not want you to go, you forget about going into the helicopter. And she didn't. I think she realized that it wasn't the smartest thing to do anyway. But it's those are the things that were only close calls that I had in Vietnam. The war didn't really start for another year or two.
You're lucky.
I was fortunate. Sometimes you just get lucky. I was there early into Special Forces. I got a lot of training.
They weren't too hard on you.
Oh no, they were not too hard on me. I mean, I
probably if you did sport. I mean, if you had done Special Forces a couple years later, they would have been more on you.
No, I'd have been a doctor doing doctor stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'd have been in an aid station back or in Saigon, or
Yeah.
But as a Special Forces doctor, I don't know what they would use you for. I mean, normally you wouldn't want to have a doctor out in a Special Forces aid attachment camp unless he's out there to do people-to-people help of the go in and take care of the local people to try to make friends with them. And that's always something that doctors in the military try to do. They will do people-to-people stuff, go in and treat people and give them medicines and that sort of stuff. We had unlimited access to whatever medications.
I think there was one more where you said the two.
Well, that's one other thing. We were flying. I would fly along with them, and when they would haul Vietnamese troops around, and every once in a while you'd hear gunshots down below, and they'd land, but I don't know who they were fighting. I never saw armies or anything like that. But we were in, I think they call it a Chinook. It's kind of a banana-shaped helicopter with twin rotors, and they kind of mesh as they have 3 or 4 rotors anyway. Or not 2 rotors, but 3 blades or 4 blades, I can't remember. And so we would deliver troops, and of course we'd get on that helicopter, and there'd be 20 young Vietnamese soldiers get on the helicopter. They looked like they were about 12 years old. I mean, a Vietnamese kid at 22, 23 years old just looks young. They just look young. And, I had the feeling they hadn't been trained in guns like I had. You never point the gun at anybody. It's either straight up or straight down. But they'd get on the helicopter and they'd be, I thought, oh God, I hope that gun isn't loaded, and we'd haul them somewhere. So we're in two Chinooks, and we're flying along together, and of course the blades are going like this, and I look at the other helicopter, and I'll swear it wasn't 40 feet away. Now, their blades are 15 feet long. The blades on our helicopter are 15 feet. That's 30 feet. So we're 10 feet. Our blades are 10 feet from their blades, and they're swinging along at, 600 miles an hour at the tip. If they touch, they're going to explode, and we're going to go down and die, both of them. And I, maybe it's farther than 10 feet, but it's kind of windy, and these big helicopters are kind of bouncing and getting a little. I get on the intercom and I say, Sergeant, I think I can see the color of that guy's eyes over next to us. Well, I didn't say that, but are we a little close to him? Do you need to be this close? Can we move a little bit away? Oh, Doc, we're plenty far away. We do this all the time. We're plenty far. Don't worry about it, Doc. Oh shit. We're gonna, I'm gonna die in this helicopter, and they're gonna. Well, he was in a helicopter crash. We think it was a missile, or something like that. And if I were president, I would make rules. You cannot be less than 60 feet apart, or something like that. Anyway. And one time, I'm on a helicopter, and this is a Huey, and I'm flying with them out on some mission of some kind, and they stop and they load on 5 Vietnamese guys who supposedly they're Viet Cong. They're probably just farm kids, but I don't know who. They're not supposed to be there. Maybe they were Viet Cong. But I'm sitting here with an AR-15 in my hand, and they put 5 people on the helicopter with me. Well, if I was a Viet Cong, as soon as we get in the air, I'd jump over and grab that gun, say, "Okay, you put us down." I'm in back with the gun. Well, I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. We ain't gonna do this. We're gonna have to do something, tie these guys up or something." Someone said we have some duct tape here. So I put duct tape across their eyes so that they couldn't see. And there's so much noise they can't communicate. I can see that. If they can't see, and I put it around their head so that they can't see, then they can't see where I am. And if they try to do anything, I can shoot anybody that starts to tear off their duct tape. And it was kind of like, I am not going to be sitting here with side by side. I mean, it's not that much room in the back end of a Huey helicopter. I mean, you got 5 guys within a distance of you and me. I always thought, that was one of my smarter moves. What was the other thing that I was going to tell? Anyway, it was. So I get out to the far west, and it's right on the coast, and a beautiful place. And here is a special forces camp, surrounded by punji sticks sticking out. They're bamboo sharpened stakes. They put feces on them, so if you run into one and get stuck with it, you get an infection, and the field is mined around it, and there are like 9 or 12 machine gun nests surrounding this camp, and I go to sleep, get in bed the first night, and all night long you hear this sound as every 15 minutes you'd hear someone hit this little thing that would go ting. That was the first nest machine gun. And then the guy in the second one would go ting ting. The guy in the third one would go ting ting ting. And then the guy in the fourth one would go ting 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 ting. You can count, you know.
Yeah.
And the guy in the fifth one would go ting 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 ting. And the sixth would be ting 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 ting. They had their pattern, you know. You'd go to sleep, and you'd hear that, you know, and you got to where you kind of counted the tings, you know. And every once in a while, there'd be a pause, you know. Number one would ting, and number two would ting, and number three would ting, and then number four didn't ting.
He falls asleep.
Then you'd hear this shout, you know, "Hey, Joe," you know, or something, you know. And then Joe would hit a ting ting. I mean, he's asleep, you know, ting 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 ting, and you spend the night, you know, and someone misses a ting, you know, and you. It was kind of a phenomenon, you know. It didn't bother you as long as they were regular and spaced properly, and oh, it was an interesting experience. And I have to say one thing, you know, when Dr. DeBakey was firing me and yelling at me and threatening me with throwing me out of the residency, and you know, everything was going wrong. Poof. Compared to Vietnam, you know, I can handle it. You know, it was. I didn't get particularly frightened. You know, they weren't going to kill me. I might end up being a dermatologist, but you know, what the hell. So, all in all, it was a good experience. It was interesting, and you know, I thought I did was a good soldier. 35 years later, I'm come into the table. I've been working at the hospital, and I've finished surgery, and I'm in my greens. I sit down. I'm in my greens still. Kathy gives me dinner. I have the phone on the table. Phone rings. I pick it up and say, "Hello." And this voice says, "Hi, this is Bill Moore. I'm looking for Dick Geis." Well, at the hospital, you know, my name is Richard Geis. I mean, it's on the door. It's on my cards. It's what the hospital knows me at. When I sign my name, it's Richard Geis. Not many people call me Dick. Old friends, family, you know, will call me Dick, but who in the hell is Bill Moore? That sounds like John Smith, you know. Well, I have a terrible memory for things like this, but Bill, I remembered, and I said, "Is this the Bill Moore I sold my motorcycle to on Okinawa in 1964? 35 years before. You know, a long time. I mean, I just couldn't think of any Bill Moores in the hospital, you know, and there's the only Bill Moore I could think of. He said, "Yeah." He said, "This is great, you know, you remembered my name and everything." And I go, "Yeah." He says, "You know, I've been on this computer." This was in 94 or 5 or something like that. He says, "I've been on the computer. There's this new program called People Finder. So you can find anybody in the country if you know where they live and their name and kind of what they do." He says, "I knew you were a doctor. I mean, we were both doctors, and I knew you were from Houston, and that your name was Richard Dick Geis or something like that." He said, "This is a great program. Not only do I get you, you answered the phone." So we chatted a bit. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I stayed in the Army." And he said, "They were really good to me. They sent me to get an infectious disease specialty, and I've been in for 35 years or something like that. I made 3-star general." Now, that meant that he had to be Surgeon General of the Army. Not the Surgeon General of the United States is an appointment, political appointment that a president makes, but the Surgeon General of the Army is a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And you can't go any higher than 3 stars, and you only get 3 stars when you're a Surgeon General. So it meant that he had to be Surgeon General. Well, he was at that time. He was the epidemiologist in Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, I think it was, and he was out of the Army at that time. But he said, you know, they were really good to me. He said they did make me stop jumping out of an airplane about 5 years before I got out. You know, he was still parachuting. You know, it's kind of a badge of courage or obedience or something. I'm not sure which. But anyway, I thought, maybe I should have stayed in the Army. And Bill might have drugged me up, you know. He might have helped me along. I might have made a star or so. Anyway, so got out of the Army, came back to Houston, started my residency, and went right into, very soon after that, into Dr. DeBakey's service.
Okay.
Okay,